Owen Mitchell had lost everything: his job, his home, and his confidence as a single father. When he risked his life to save a stranger from a burning wreck, he had no idea she was Elena Hart, billionaire CEO of a thriving empire. Could Owen's simple act of bravery be the key to a second chance he never imagined? Stay tuned to find out how one moment of courage can rewrite your destiny. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The morning air bit sharply at Owen Mitchell's face as he stood quietly by the kitchen window, staring at the stack of unopened bills piled on the counter. The red stamped letters screamed "Final Notice" louder than any voice could, reminding him how close he was to the edge. Sunlight trickled through the old, yellowing curtains, catching dust motes in a lazy dance, a cruel contrast to the storm churning inside his chest. "Hey, Dad, I packed my bag all by myself today," Mia announced cheerfully, bounding into the room with the kind of enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could muster. Her bright smile, innocent and unaware, tugged painfully at Owen's heart. He turned quickly, forcing a reassuring grin as he knelt down to straighten her oversized pink scarf. "That's amazing, sweetheart. Got everything? Homework? Snacks?" She nodded energetically, her brown curls bouncing. "Yep, I even packed my lucky pencil." "That's my girl," he said softly, trying desperately to keep the tremble from his voice. His throat felt tight as he glanced over her head toward the empty fridge. It had been almost empty for days now, meals growing smaller and desperation growing bigger. As he helped Mia into her worn-out jacket, Owen felt a pang of shame surge through him. He knew he should be able to give her more, a stable home, a sense of security. But life had spiraled out of control so fast, losing his construction job, falling behind on rent, and now facing eviction. All he could do was hold on tight to Mia, protecting her from the truth for as long as he could. "Daddy, are we going to be late again?" Mia asked softly, her small hand clutching his tightly, eyes wide with worry. "No, honey," he assured her, even as he silently prayed the ancient car parked out front had enough gas left in it to make it to school. He brushed a gentle hand over her hair, hiding the fear in his eyes behind a practiced smile. "We'll make it just in time, I promise." And as they stepped outside into the bitter chill of early morning, Owen quietly closed the door behind him, silently vowing that no matter how hard things got, he would never let Mia see him break. The tired hum of the engine filled the silence as Owen drove home from dropping Mia off at school, his grip tightening on the worn steering wheel. He exhaled slowly, his breath fogging slightly in the cold air that seeped through the cracked window of the old sedan. He was lost in thoughts of unpaid rent and looming eviction notices when suddenly a violent screech of tires shattered the quiet morning. Owen's head snapped up just in time to see a sleek black luxury car, speeding recklessly down the opposite lane, suddenly lose control. It swerved erratically, wheels spinning wildly before skidding sideways and slamming violently into the guardrail with an ear-splitting crash. The expensive vehicle flipped onto its side, sparks erupting from the twisted metal as smoke began pouring out from beneath its crumpled hood. Heart pounding like a drumbeat, Owen slammed on his brakes, bringing his car to an abrupt halt at the roadside. Without hesitation, he jumped out, running towards the chaos, adrenaline pushing past the fear tightening in his chest. Flames now flickered to life beneath the mangled hood, and a voice echoed distantly from inside the wreckage, a woman's voice, strained and terrified. "Help! Somebody, please!" she shouted, panic rising above the roar of approaching flames. "I'm here!" Owen yelled, racing to the shattered windshield. Jagged glass cut into his palms as he tried to clear an opening, the heat searing against his face. Through the choking smoke, he glimpsed a woman pinned behind the steering wheel, eyes wide with fear and desperation. "Hang on, I'll get you out," Owen promised, forcing himself to stay calm as flames climbed higher, licking hungrily at the vehicle's frame. He tugged at the jammed door, muscles straining, gritting his teeth as metal protested loudly beneath his grasp. Desperation surged as the heat intensified, and finally, with a scream of determination, the door gave way. "Come on," he urged, reaching into the smoldering interior, wrapping his arms firmly around the dazed woman, pulling her carefully but swiftly free from the wreckage. Just moments before, flames erupted into a towering inferno behind them. Owen stumbled backward, coughing, holding her close as they both collapsed safely onto the cold pavement. The woman, breathing heavily and shaking, clung to him, her expensive clothing blackened and torn, eyes filled with profound gratitude. "You saved my life," she whispered weakly, staring up at him in disbelief. Owen just nodded silently, adrenaline still pulsing through him, completely unaware he'd just changed both their lives forever. The steady hum of hospital machines filled Elena Hart's ears as her eyes fluttered open, the stark white ceiling swimming slowly into focus. Pain pulsed through her shoulder, a sharp reminder of the terrifying crash she'd barely survived. Blurred memories flashed through her mind, the squeal of tires, the suffocating smoke, flames licking hungrily at twisted metal. But clearest of all was the memory of strong arms pulling her to safety, gentle yet determined. Her heart quickened slightly, remembering his face, rough, tired, yet impossibly kind. Elena turned her head, blinking slowly. The hospital room was quiet, sterile, untouched by the chaos she'd just experienced. She pressed a button by her bedside, and soon a nurse appeared with a gentle smile. "You're very lucky, Ms. Hart," the nurse said softly, checking the monitors beside her bed. "That crash could have been far worse." "Yes," Elena murmured, her voice hoarse and strained. "The man who pulled me out. Did he leave his name?" "Owen Mitchell," the nurse replied warmly. "He stayed until you were safe, but didn't linger. He seemed uncomfortable with attention, but we got his details just in case." Elena nodded slowly, repeating the name silently to herself. Owen Mitchell. She needed to know more about the man who risked his life for her without a second thought. Hours later, Elena sat up slowly, pain medication softening the ache in her shoulder, while her assistant, Julia, relayed what she'd learned. "Owen's a single father," Julia began quietly, her voice tinged with sadness. "Recently unemployed after losing his job at a construction firm. He and his daughter Mia were evicted just days ago. They've been staying at a cheap motel outside town." Elena felt a wave of guilt and compassion wash over her. She'd built an empire from nothing, accustomed to luxury and power, insulated from hardships faced by people like Owen. But his bravery, the humility in his silence, he'd asked for nothing, hadn't even waited for a thank you. The thought stirred something deep within her, a desire to repay him for his kindness, to show him gratitude worthy of his selflessness. "Arrange for a car," Elena instructed softly, determination hardening her voice. "I want to meet Owen Mitchell in person. Whatever he's facing, whatever his struggles, I'm going to make sure he never has to face them alone again." Julia nodded quietly, leaving Elena alone to her thoughts. As she leaned back, eyes drifting closed, Elena knew this was more than just repaying a debt. It was a chance to finally do something truly meaningful, to change a life just as Owen had changed hers. Owen sat quietly at the edge of the motel bed, staring blankly at the peeling wallpaper and listening to the faint, rhythmic dripping from the bathroom faucet. Each droplet echoed the persistent worries that nagged him, a relentless reminder of how quickly his life had spiraled into uncertainty. Mia lay peacefully beside him, curled beneath thin, scratchy blankets, her small face serene in sleep. She deserved so much more than this, than a cheap, moldy motel room. But right now, it was all he could afford. A soft knock at the door startled him, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. He rose slowly, cautious as he approached, heart tightening with an instinctive fear of more bad news. He opened the door cautiously, eyes widening slightly in surprise to find Elena Hart standing in the dimly lit hallway, her eyes warm but uncertain. "Hi," Elena said softly, a gentle smile on her lips. "I'm sorry for showing up like this, but I needed to see you." Owen hesitated, glancing self-consciously behind him toward the cramped room where his daughter slept. Elena seemed to sense his discomfort, lowering her voice. "Could we talk outside for a moment?" He nodded silently, stepping out and gently closing the door behind him. The cold air outside was biting, and Owen crossed his arms, suddenly feeling vulnerable under her thoughtful gaze. Elena took a deep breath, her eyes sincere and earnest. "Owen, you saved my life, and there are no words adequate enough to thank you, but maybe actions can speak louder than words." She paused, her voice steady despite her obvious emotion. "I know about your situation, the eviction, losing your job. Let me help you. It's the very least I can do." Owen looked down at the worn concrete beneath his feet, embarrassment staining his cheeks. His pride tightened like a knot deep in his chest. "I appreciate it, Elena," he murmured, voice tight, "but I can't accept charity." She took a step closer, urgency and genuine kindness filling her voice. "It's not charity, Owen. It's gratitude. Please, I have the means to help you start fresh. A stable home, work opportunities, something better for Mia." Owen shook his head gently, meeting her eyes with quiet dignity. "I didn't pull you from that car for money, Elena. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Accepting your money, it wouldn't feel right." Elena searched his face, clearly moved by his honesty. She nodded softly, respect and admiration reflected in her gentle expression. "I understand," she finally whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But please just know that the offer remains open." "Thank you," Owen replied sincerely, his gaze steady, holding back the storm inside him. "But right now, I just need to get back on my own 2 feet again." She reached out, gently touching his arm, her touch reassuring yet respectful. "Then at least let me help you find a way to do that." He hesitated, then nodded slowly, offering a faint smile. "Maybe." As Elena stepped away, disappearing into the chill of the evening, Owen stood quietly outside, heart heavy yet strangely comforted. He knew he'd refused what might have been his quickest way out of this mess. But in that moment, he'd chosen something even more valuable: his dignity. Elena sat in her spacious office, the expansive windows framing a sweeping view of the city skyline. Yet today, the familiar beauty went unnoticed. Her thoughts were elsewhere, circling repeatedly back to Owen Mitchell, something about the quiet strength in his eyes, his gentle dignity in refusing her help, haunted her in a way she hadn't expected. Her fingers drummed thoughtfully against the polished mahogany desk, the soft tap-tap breaking the heavy silence. Owen had saved her life without hesitation, risking his own without a second thought. Yet he'd refused her support despite desperately needing it. That kind of character was rare, especially in her world. She picked up the phone, dialing her assistant's number. "Julia, could you come in, please?" Julia appeared quickly, a small tablet clutched in her hands, concern flickering subtly in her eyes. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes," Elena said quietly, leaning forward. "I need you to look deeper into Owen Mitchell, not just his financial troubles. Tell me more about him. What kind of man he really is, his life, the things he cares about." Julia nodded slowly, sensing Elena's seriousness. "I'll handle it right away." Hours later, as the daylight dimmed into an amber sunset, Elena sat quietly, reading through the detailed file Julia had prepared. She absorbed every word, her heart growing heavier yet warmer with each passing moment. Owen Mitchell, she learned, had grown up modestly, working tirelessly from a young age after losing his parents in a tragic accident. Despite hardships, he managed to build a stable life, marrying his high school sweetheart and welcoming Mia into their lives. Elena's heart tightened painfully as she read of the illness that stole his wife away far too young, leaving him to raise Mia alone. Even then, Owen had persevered, providing tirelessly for Mia until circumstances turned harsh again. The eviction notice, the loss of his construction job. Through it all, Owen had remained a man of principle, never taking shortcuts, always refusing handouts. Countless statements from friends and former coworkers echoed his unwavering integrity, kindness, and humility. Elena exhaled slowly, deeply moved by what she'd read. It was clear Owen Mitchell wasn't merely a man down on his luck. He was someone who genuinely cared about doing the right thing, someone who had fought courageously against hardship, never allowing his struggles to darken the kindness he offered others. She stared thoughtfully out the window as the city lights flickered softly to life, illuminating the fading evening. Elena had spent years building an empire, surrounded by people who valued success over integrity. But now, after meeting Owen, success seemed suddenly shallow, empty, even, if it wasn't built on strength of character. Determined, she placed the file aside. Elena knew in her heart that her involvement with Owen Mitchell was far from over. She respected his dignity deeply. Now she was determined to find a way to help him, one that he could accept with pride, one that honored the extraordinary man he clearly was. The soft glow of evening sunlight filtered through the large windows of Elena's spacious penthouse, casting a warm, amber glow over the dining table meticulously set for dinner. Owen stood quietly, absorbing the subtle elegance around him, polished marble, delicate crystal, and refined artwork, a stark contrast to the tiny motel room he'd left behind just an hour earlier. Mia sat beside him, her eyes wide with awe, as she carefully ran her small fingers along the intricate pattern of the silverware. "Daddy, this looks like a princess's house," she whispered, excitement glowing in her young eyes. Owen smiled gently at his daughter, masking the apprehension he felt in this unfamiliar world. "It certainly does, sweetheart," he murmured, glancing nervously toward Elena, who watched them warmly from across the table. "I'm glad you could both make it," Elena said softly, pouring water gracefully into their glasses. Her expression was gentle, sincere, nothing like the cold businesswoman Owen had imagined someone of her wealth and status to be. Instead, she seemed genuinely happy they were there, putting him at ease despite the intimidating surroundings. "I appreciate the invitation," Owen replied quietly, watching as Mia eagerly began eating the carefully prepared meal, a faint smile brightening his usually somber face. As dinner progressed, conversation flowed naturally. Elena asked about Mia's school, her friends, and her favorite books, genuinely attentive to every detail the little girl eagerly shared. Owen watched them closely, realizing Elena Hart was much more than a successful CEO. She was kind, thoughtful, and genuine in ways he'd never expected. As the evening wore on, Elena gently shifted her attention toward Owen, her expression serious but comforting. "Owen, I've given this a lot of thought," she began softly, meeting his gaze steadily. "I know you don't want charity, and I deeply respect that. But you have skills, experience, judgment, integrity that could be incredibly valuable in my company." Owen hesitated, suddenly wary, uncertainty flickering across his face. "I'm not exactly corporate material," he admitted quietly. "I build things. I work with my hands." She leaned forward slightly, her voice gentle yet persuasive. "That's exactly what my company needs, someone who understands practical solutions, someone grounded in reality. You'd be consulting on projects, offering valuable insight based on your experience." Owen remained silent, visibly conflicted, the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on his shoulders. "Elena, I appreciate the offer, really, but I'm not sure it's the right fit. It's a different world." Elena smiled softly, understanding reflected warmly in her eyes. "Take your time, Owen. Just think about it. It would mean a lot, not just to the company, but to me personally." He nodded slowly, absorbing her words, his thoughts racing with possibilities and fears. As the evening drew to a close, Elena walked them gently to the door, offering Mia a warm hug and Owen an encouraging smile. Standing in the hallway, Owen took Mia's hand and glanced back at Elena. "Thank you again for everything," he said sincerely, his voice thick with genuine gratitude. I'll give it some thought. As they walked away into the night, Owen knew that Elena's proposal wasn't just an opportunity, it was a crossroads. His decision now would change not just his life, but Mia's future forever. Owen sat quietly on the edge of the motel bed, his mind heavy with thoughts he couldn't shake. Elena's generous offer echoing repeatedly in his head. He stared blankly at the faded floral carpet, his heart tangled in knots of doubt and inadequacy. He knew the opportunity was a lifeline, a rare chance to rebuild their lives, but deep down, he couldn't help feeling that he didn't belong in Elena's polished corporate world. Mia's soft footsteps broke the silence as she entered the room quietly, holding her small teddy bear close to her chest. She hesitated, noticing the thoughtful expression shadowing her father's face. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked gently, climbing onto the bed beside him. Owen looked down, his heart tightening at her innocent concern. "Yeah, sweetheart. I'm just thinking, that's all." Mia studied him carefully, her big eyes full of quiet understanding far beyond her years. "Are you thinking about the nice lady's offer?" He exhaled slowly, nodding with a faint, troubled smile. "Yes, I am. But I'm not sure it's right for us. It's a different world, Mia, a fancy world. I don't want to disappoint anyone, especially you." Mia tilted her head thoughtfully, her small hand reaching out to softly touch his arm. "But, Daddy, you're good at everything you do. Remember how you fixed our neighbor's porch last summer when no one else could? Everyone said you were the best." He chuckled softly, warmth briefly chasing away the shadow of doubt from his eyes. "That was different, sweetie. This isn't about fixing things with my hands. It's about big decisions, important meetings, things I've never done before." Mia leaned closer, her voice earnest yet gentle, eyes bright with hopeful determination. "Maybe it's like learning to ride my bike. You told me it was scary at first, but if I didn't try, I'd never know how good I could be. Remember?" Owen stared at his daughter, her simple, innocent wisdom cutting straight through his fear. He blinked slowly, moved by her clarity and courage, a lump forming in his throat. "You're right, Mia. You're braver than me sometimes, you know that?" She smiled softly, wrapping her small arms tightly around him. "No, Daddy. I'm brave because you taught me to be, and maybe now it's your turn to be brave." Owen held her close, the sincerity in her words washing over him, lifting the weight he'd carried for far too long. He'd been so focused on his doubts, his fears, that he'd almost missed seeing the fresh start Elena's offer could bring, the second chance that Mia so deeply deserved. He kissed the top of Mia's head gently, his voice quiet, but filled with newfound determination. "All right, Mia. I'll think about it again. Maybe it's time we both got a fresh start." And as Mia smiled brightly, nestling closer into his embrace, Owen knew he owed it to her, to both of them, to find the courage to say yes, no matter how uncertain the future seemed. The elevator doors slid open silently, revealing an elegant expanse of polished marble floors, sleek glass walls, and impeccably dressed employees gliding confidently from office to office. Owen hesitated briefly, clutching a worn leather briefcase tightly in his calloused hand, feeling intensely out of place amidst the tailored suits and expensive shoes that whispered quietly against the glossy tiles. His heart pounded nervously as he took his first steps into Elena Hart's corporate world, fighting the nagging voice deep inside that insisted he didn't belong here. Elena approached warmly, her presence instantly reassuring. "Owen, I'm glad you came," she said gently, her smile sincere yet professional. "Let me introduce you to the team." Owen followed her through the sprawling office, conscious of curious eyes tracking his every movement. The air seemed thick with quiet judgment, polite smiles barely masking skepticism. He'd spent his life building with his hands. Now suddenly, he had to navigate a different kind of construction, one made from words, strategies, and unseen politics. "This is Stephen Brooks, my senior partner. Elena said as they stopped in front of a tall, sharply dressed man whose cool eyes regarded Owen with thinly veiled disdain. "So you're the hero mechanic," Stephen drawled, a forced politeness in his voice as he extended a cold handshake. "Interesting choice bringing you on board. I hope you can keep up." Owen's jaw tightened slightly, forcing a calm nod. "I'll do my best." "I'm sure," Stephen replied dismissively, turning swiftly back to his paperwork, making clear his opinion without another word. Throughout the day, Owen struggled. Meetings filled with unfamiliar terminology and financial jargon overwhelmed him. Conversations buzzed with corporate speak he didn't understand, and he continually felt the silent judgment emanating from Stephen and other senior managers. He quickly realized Elena's employees were cautious around him, skeptical of a man whose only qualification seemed to be a heroic act. Finally, during a planning session late in the afternoon, Owen offered a straightforward solution to an engineering issue the team debated endlessly. "Why not simplify the design here?" he suggested carefully, sketching quickly on a notepad. "It's less expensive and gets the job done efficiently." Stephen raised an eyebrow, dismissing the suggestion without even glancing at Owen's sketch. "We don't cut corners here, Mitchell. You clearly don't understand how things work in our world." The words stung, embarrassment heating Owen's face as the room fell awkwardly silent. Elena glanced apologetically toward him, sympathy clear in her eyes, but Stephen's dismissal had already sunk in deep. As the day ended, Owen lingered alone by a large window, staring silently out at the sprawling city, frustration gnawing painfully at him. He wondered bitterly if he'd made a mistake, if this unfamiliar place would ever accept someone like him, a man whose greatest asset was sincerity rather than polished presentations. But somewhere deep inside him, Mia's voice echoed gently, "Daddy, it's your turn to be brave." Owen straightened slightly, breathing deeply to steady his nerves. No matter how rocky the start, he knew he owed it to Mia, to Elena, and most importantly to himself, to try again tomorrow, to prove he belonged here, no matter how many doubted him. Owen stood quietly at the conference room window, staring out across the city skyline, frustration etched deeply into his features. The day had been brutal. One misunderstanding after another, subtle jabs from Stephen, and sideways glances from the rest of Elena's team. Doubt nagged at him, threatening to unravel his fragile confidence, whispering that perhaps he really didn't belong here after all. "Rough day?" Elena's gentle voice cut through his thoughts, startling him slightly. He turned quickly, forcing a small, weary smile. "Is it that obvious?" Elena stepped closer, compassion softening her eyes as she studied his tired face. "You know, my first day here wasn't easy either. Everyone doubted me, even Stephen. Sometimes they still do." Surprised by her honesty, Owen's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I guess I didn't expect it to be this hard," he admitted quietly. "I fix things, build things. This place feels like it's made of puzzles I don't know how to solve." Elena nodded understandingly, motioning for him to sit beside her at the long, polished table. She leaned forward, her tone serious yet gentle. "You may not realize it, Owen, but your instincts are good. You see simplicity where everyone else sees complications. That's valuable." He met her eyes, searching carefully. "Tell that to Stephen." Elena smiled softly, a playful glint in her gaze. "Stephen believes in rules, structure, and hierarchy. He doesn't like outsiders, but your strength lies in thinking outside that box. It's why I hired you." Owen shook his head slightly, doubt still lingering. "What if I fail you? What if this is too big for me?" Without hesitation, Elena placed her hand gently on his, her touch warm, comforting. "You already proved your strength the day you saved my life. Trust yourself like I trust you." Her words sank deeply into his chest, warming him in a way he'd almost forgotten existed. The tenderness in her eyes wasn't something he'd expected, not from someone of her position, someone with power and influence far beyond his reach. "Let me mentor you," Elena continued softly, sincerity shining clearly in her gaze. "I can help you navigate this, but more importantly, I want to help you believe in yourself again." Owen exhaled slowly, feeling the sincerity of her offer wash over him. For the first time, he felt genuinely supported, not pitied, not underestimated, but truly seen. "I'd appreciate that," he finally said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Over the next few hours, Elena patiently guided him through corporate strategies, carefully explaining details without condescension or impatience. Together they worked side by side, sharing quiet laughter as Owen gradually began to grasp concepts that had felt impossibly out of reach earlier. As darkness settled softly over the city, Elena leaned back, her gaze thoughtful, admiring how quickly he had adapted under genuine encouragement. Owen looked at her, a quiet confidence finally beginning to replace his previous doubts. "Thank you," he whispered sincerely, "for believing in me, even when I didn't." She smiled warmly, her eyes meeting his with undeniable warmth. "Everyone deserves someone who sees their potential," she replied softly. "Especially you, Owen." As their eyes lingered on each other, something new passed silently between them, a deeper connection forged through trust, respect, and something else neither was quite ready to acknowledge. But Owen knew, in that quiet moment, that Elena Hart was no longer just the woman he'd saved. She'd become someone he could truly trust. The construction site bustled with activity, the air thick with dust, noise, and the urgency of looming deadlines. Owen moved steadily through the maze of scaffolding and unfinished walls, his experienced eyes carefully absorbing every detail. Despite the polished suits and high-tech planning software the company employed, something deep within him knew instinctively when things weren't quite right. Years of hard-earned experience had sharpened his instincts in ways others might overlook. Stephen stood in the center of the main area, visibly frustrated, arms crossed tightly over his expensive jacket. Engineers hovered nervously around him, their anxious faces illuminated by the blueprints they were hastily referencing. Owen paused quietly at the edge of the group, listening carefully, his calm gaze studying the tangled problem they were debating. "It's impossible," one young engineer insisted nervously. "There's simply no way to fit the ventilation system without compromising structural integrity." Stephen's jaw tightened impatiently. "Well, find a way. We're already behind schedule." Owen cleared his throat softly, stepping forward slightly, drawing skeptical glances from the team. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked carefully. Stephen barely concealed his irritation, reluctantly waving him forward. "By all means, Mitchell, enlighten us." Ignoring Stephen's sarcasm, Owen examined the blueprints closely, tracing lines with his finger, visualizing the layout vividly in his mind. After a quiet moment, he pointed to a small area that had been overlooked by everyone. "Have you considered rerouting it through this section here? You can bypass the main supports without losing any airflow." The engineers exchanged uncertain looks, hesitating briefly before one finally nodded slowly. It could actually work. No one thought to look there. Stephen's expression darkened, clearly annoyed that Owen's simple yet effective solution had eluded his seasoned team. Still, he remained silent, unable to argue with the practicality of Owen's insight. Over the following weeks, Owen consistently found similar solutions, simple, practical adjustments overlooked by those accustomed to complicated software and rigid planning. Quietly, without fanfare or ego, he earned grudging respect from even the most skeptical employees. They began seeking his opinion more often, recognizing the value of his straightforward, hands-on perspective. One afternoon, as Owen was carefully inspecting the newly installed fixtures, he noticed Elena quietly watching him from across the room. A gentle, approving smile curved her lips as she observed the genuine respect her team now showed him. "You've made quite an impression," she said warmly, approaching him quietly. He shrugged humbly, wiping dust from his hands. "Just doing what I've always done, fixing things." Elena's eyes sparkled knowingly, admiration clear in her gaze. "You're doing more than fixing things, Owen. You're teaching us how to see clearly again." He met her gaze quietly, warmth spreading slowly through his chest at her words. Finally feeling accepted, recognized for the value he brought beyond the simple label of hero mechanic, Owen realized how much Elena's belief in him had changed everything. For the first time in far too long, he felt a sense of purpose again, a renewed strength he knew he owed to her trust. And as Elena smiled softly, stepping away to let him finish his work, Owen knew he'd finally found a place where he genuinely belonged, not because he was perfect, but because he was exactly who he needed to be. The afternoon sun cast warm, golden rays across Elena's sprawling backyard, shimmering gently on the surface of a pristine swimming pool and softly illuminating the carefully manicured gardens. Owen stood at the edge of the patio, watching with quiet admiration as Mia ran joyfully across the soft grass, her laughter bubbling brightly through the crisp autumn air. It had been far too long since he'd seen his daughter so carefree, her happiness filling his chest with quiet gratitude. Elena approached slowly, carrying 2 tall glasses filled with lemonade. Her casual attire softened her professional edge, highlighting a warmth and gentleness Owen rarely witnessed in the bustling corridors of the office. She offered him a gentle smile as she handed him one of the glasses. "Thank you again for coming," Elena said warmly, her voice sincere. "It's nice to have company here for a change." Owen took the drink, a grateful smile briefly crossing his face. "Thank you for inviting us. Mia hasn't stopped talking about it all week." As they stood quietly sipping their drinks, Elena's eyes softened as she watched Mia carefully pick wildflowers along the garden path, her small fingers delicately arranging each one. "She's incredible, Owen. You've done a wonderful job raising her." Owen's throat tightened slightly, emotion briefly overwhelming him. "She deserves a lot more than I've been able to give her lately," he confessed quietly. "But I try." Elena touched his arm gently, her voice firm yet comforting. "She has love and strength. That means far more than anything money could buy." Their quiet moment was broken as Mia ran towards them, her small hands overflowing with colorful flowers, cheeks flushed and eyes sparkling brightly. Without hesitation, she approached Elena, shyly offering her the tiny bouquet. "I picked these for you," she announced softly, her smile wide and genuine. Elena knelt down, deeply touched, carefully accepting the flowers. "They're beautiful, Mia. Thank you so much." Mia beamed proudly, immediately climbing into Elena's lap, settling naturally and comfortably against her, as though they'd known each other forever. Owen's heart swelled, emotions he'd long buried suddenly rising sharply to the surface. He watched quietly as Elena gently brushed Mia's hair back, listening carefully as his daughter excitedly explained each flower she'd picked. Seeing Elena's genuine affection for Mia, watching how effortlessly his daughter trusted and adored her, he felt his own affection toward Elena deepen unexpectedly, softening edges inside him he'd carefully guarded for years. The sunlight faded slowly, bathing the yard in soft amber hues, but Owen hardly noticed. He was focused entirely on Elena and Mia, 2 people who had each, in their own ways, saved him from a darkness he'd almost forgotten how to escape. As the evening grew cool and Mia grew sleepy, Elena stood quietly by his side, her voice gentle yet deeply sincere. "I can't remember the last time I felt so genuinely happy," she confessed softly, glancing up to meet his eyes. "Thank you for letting me be part of your lives." Owen held her gaze silently for a moment, feeling the warmth between them grow stronger. He knew in that instant Elena Hart had become much more than a friend, a mentor, or even someone who'd simply changed his life. She'd become someone he truly cared for, someone who made him believe, for the first time in a very long time, in the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The glow from the crackling fireplace gently lit the cozy living room, casting soft shadows across Elena's thoughtful expression. Owen sat quietly beside her, the warmth from the fire blending comfortably with the subtle tension that lingered in the air between them. Outside, the evening had fallen into a gentle silence, leaving them isolated from the rest of the world, a perfect setting for truths long hidden to finally surface. Elena stared thoughtfully into the dancing flames, her usually confident eyes softer now, tinged with vulnerability Owen had never witnessed before. He watched her carefully, sensing she was working up the courage to speak, respecting the silence until she was ready. "You know, Owen," she finally began quietly, her voice barely more than a whisper, "people think success is the answer to everything. They see the money, the power, the shiny veneer, and they assume I'm completely fulfilled." She paused, drawing a slow breath, as though the next words were difficult to share. "But in reality, I've never felt more alone than after I reached the top." Owen remained silent, allowing her honesty to fill the room, his gentle gaze steady and understanding. Elena continued softly, her eyes clouded with emotion. "It's like building a fortress, strong and impressive on the outside, but when you look around, you realize you've built walls so high that no one else can reach you. I've spent years surrounded by people, yet I often feel utterly alone." Her voice faltered slightly, eyes shimmering with an unshed tear. That loneliness becomes normal, so much so that when genuine connections come along, they're almost frightening. Owen leaned forward slightly, his heart tightening with empathy. He gently touched her hand, offering comfort through simple human contact. "I understand," he whispered sincerely. "After losing my wife, it felt easier to shut myself away too, but walls only keep out the good, along with the bad." She looked up, meeting his gaze deeply, vulnerability blending with cautious hope. "You seem to break through those walls effortlessly," Elena confessed softly. "You're the first person in a long time who truly sees me, not the CEO, but the person beneath it all." Owen held her gaze, heart racing gently, feeling an intimacy bloom between them, one deeper than physical attraction, born from raw honesty and quiet trust. "Elena, you gave me a chance when everyone else overlooked me. I see you clearly because you've allowed me to, and I'm grateful." A soft smile touched her lips, genuine warmth replacing her earlier sadness. "Maybe we both needed someone to remind us that we're allowed to be human." He chuckled softly, gently squeezing her hand. "I think you're right." In the comforting quiet that followed, the air grew thick with unspoken emotion, a closeness that neither of them could deny nor retreat from easily. Elena shifted closer, her head resting gently against Owen's shoulder, an act of trust more profound than any business deal or professional success. As the fire flickered quietly before them, Owen knew their connection had crossed into something deeper, something tender and rare. They had allowed their vulnerabilities to bridge the space between their worlds, creating a bond neither had expected, yet both had secretly hoped for. And in that simple moment of genuine intimacy, both Owen and Elena found themselves silently wondering how they had ever faced the darkness alone, and grateful that now, perhaps, they would no longer have to. Elena stood calmly at her desk, reviewing the latest project updates, when the office door swung open abruptly, startling her from her thoughts. Stephen Brooks stormed into the room, his face etched with frustration and barely concealed anger, eyes sharp with accusation. "We need to talk, Elena," he said tightly, not bothering with formalities, as he slammed the door shut behind him. "This situation, with Owen Mitchell, has gotten completely out of hand." Elena slowly set down the papers, meeting Stephen's piercing gaze with quiet authority. "I'm listening, Stephen," she replied evenly, her voice measured despite the irritation rising within her. Stephen took a step forward, his voice rising with barely contained hostility. "You're showing blatant favoritism, Elena. The entire team sees it. Bringing someone completely unqualified into key meetings, trusting his judgment over seasoned experts. What exactly is going on here?" Her jaw tightened, eyes narrowing slightly as she straightened her shoulders, meeting his challenge head-on. Owen has consistently provided practical solutions that no one else even considered. He brings clarity and perspective we've lacked. That's why he's here, Stephen. Stephen scoffed bitterly, clearly unconvinced. Please, Elena. Everyone knows the real reason. You feel indebted to him because he saved your life. But business isn't charity. You're risking our entire reputation on someone who simply doesn't belong. Elena stepped closer, her voice dangerously calm, yet firm. Watch yourself, Stephen. Owen's presence here has nothing to do with charity or personal gratitude. He's earned every bit of respect he's received, respect, I might add, that you've deliberately withheld. Stephen leaned forward, his eyes darkening, voice low with barely restrained anger. You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. People are beginning to talk, Elena. They're questioning your leadership because of your personal feelings. Anger flared sharply in Elena's eyes, her voice shaking slightly with carefully controlled fury. Let them question, Stephen. Owen Mitchell is an asset, and frankly, I trust his integrity more than I trust your current judgment. Stephen recoiled, clearly shocked by her fierce defense. Silence stretched tautly between them, tension thickening like storm clouds gathering in a volatile sky. He shook his head bitterly, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet tone. If this is the direction you're choosing, Elena, don't be surprised when your empire starts crumbling beneath you. She held his gaze unflinchingly, refusing to yield. My decisions have built this company, Stephen. Trust that my judgment is exactly what keeps it standing. Stephen turned sharply, stalking toward the door, his voice cutting like ice as he paused to glance back. I hope you're prepared for the fallout, Elena. This isn't over. As the door slammed behind him, Elena sank slowly into her chair, her heart pounding fiercely. She knew the confrontation had escalated internal tensions to a breaking point, yet she couldn't regret defending Owen. He'd earned her trust and respect, becoming more than just an employee. He'd become someone she fiercely believed in, despite the risks. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Elena felt the weight of her choices press heavily upon her. She knew Stephen was right about one thing: this wasn't over. Yet, even as uncertainty threatened to cloud her path, she knew one truth clearly. Standing by Owen was not only the right decision professionally, but personally as well. And for Elena Hart, that was enough. Owen paused quietly in the dim hallway outside the executive conference room, his heart suddenly tightening at the sound of raised voices filtering through the slightly open door. He hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but something about the sharpness in Stephen's voice froze him in place, pulling him into a moment he knew was private, but couldn't seem to walk away from. Elena, he's nothing but a mechanic who got lucky, Stephen hissed bitterly. You're staking your reputation and the entire company's on someone who simply doesn't belong here. Owen's stomach churned uneasily, each sharp word piercing his already fragile confidence. He pressed himself silently against the wall, Stephen's accusation slicing deeply into doubts he'd fought hard to overcome. Stephen, your bias blinds you, Elena's voice countered sharply, determined and unwavering. Owen's instincts and insights have consistently saved this company money, time, and resources. He deserves your respect. Stephen laughed harshly, bitterness saturating every word. He's a liability, Elena. Admit it. This is personal for you. You're jeopardizing your credibility and mine by backing someone who'll never truly belong in our world. The tension hung heavy in the air, thick enough to suffocate. Owen felt nausea rise, shame heating his face. Stephen had articulated his own deepest fears, fears he'd desperately tried to silence ever since stepping into Elena's sleek, polished world. Each word struck painfully, echoing the cruel voice of doubt already rooted deep within him. Unable to endure another moment, Owen turned quickly, retreating silently down the hall, embarrassment and hurt washing over him in heavy waves. He pushed through the exit door, stumbling outside onto the rooftop terrace, breathing shakily, feeling his carefully built confidence rapidly unraveling. Moments later, Elena found him standing silently at the edge, shoulders slumped, his eyes distant. She approached gently, her voice soft, concerned. "Owen, what's wrong?" He looked at her, vulnerability raw in his gaze. "Stephen's right," he said softly, defeated. "I'm just a mechanic. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe you made a mistake." Elena stepped closer, gently touching his arm, her eyes firm, yet tender. "Don't ever let Stephen's bitterness define you, Owen. You have done more for this company in weeks than many have done in years." He shook his head slowly, doubt clouding his eyes. "But what if he's right, Elena? What if I'm just holding you back? What if I fail you?" Elena lifted his chin gently, forcing him to meet her determined gaze. "You saved my life once, Owen. But your greatest strength isn't in heroic moments. It's in the quiet moments when you show courage every day, in staying when it's hard, in believing when no one else does. I believe in you, Owen Mitchell, not because of your past, but because of the man you are right now." Her words filled him slowly, mending broken pieces deep inside, reminding him who he truly was beneath the doubts Stephen had stirred. Owen felt the tightness in his chest ease slightly, replaced by something stronger, a new quiet determination fueled by Elena's unwavering belief. "Thank you," he whispered, sincerity softening his eyes, his voice steadying. "For everything." Elena squeezed his hand gently, warmth passing silently between them. "Don't thank me, Owen. Just keep believing in yourself as much as I do." Standing together beneath the open sky, Owen knew Stephen's words would no longer hold power over him, because Elena Hart saw his worth clearly, and for now, that mattered more than anything else. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense, heavy with unspoken anxiety. Owen stood at the head of the sleek conference table, papers spread before him, conscious of the skeptical eyes studying his every move. Stephen sat directly across from him, arms folded, eyes narrowed with distrust, clearly expecting Owen to fail. Owen took a deep breath, steadying himself against the pressure weighing down on him. The project, one crucial to the company's future, had hit unexpected roadblocks, spiraling costs and mounting delays, threatening massive financial losses. Everyone was on edge, uncertain of how to navigate the crisis, but Owen had spent long nights studying the blueprints, reviewing supply chains, and walking the site until dawn. He was certain he'd found a solution. "Look," Owen began, voice calm but steady, as he laid out the revised plans. "The current approach is unnecessarily complicated. By simplifying this section," he pointed confidently at the schematic, "we can drastically reduce construction delays without sacrificing quality. It's practical, and it's proven." Stephen leaned forward sharply, skepticism heavy in his voice. "You're suggesting we completely change our strategy this late in the game? You realize the risk we're taking?" Owen met his gaze without flinching, confidence strengthening his voice. "The bigger risk is sticking to a failing plan. Trust me, I've seen projects like this before. We're losing money every day we hesitate. My approach will get us back on track." Murmurs filled the room as engineers and senior managers exchanged cautious looks, weighing Owen's proposal. Elena, seated quietly at the far end, studied Owen with steady encouragement, her belief giving him the courage he needed. Stephen scoffed openly, leaning back dismissively. "You really believe a mechanic's guesswork can outperform our best engineers?" Owen straightened his shoulders, determination sharpening his voice. "With all due respect, Stephen, it's not guesswork. It's practical experience. I've been on the ground long enough to recognize solutions your software never will. Give me a chance and I'll prove it." The silence stretched, heavy with uncertainty, until Elena finally spoke, her voice firm and authoritative. "I trust Owen's instincts. Proceed with his approach." Stephen's jaw clenched tightly, clearly displeased, but the room nodded collectively, accepting Elena's decision. In the days that followed, Owen personally oversaw each detail, tirelessly guiding the crew and adjusting strategies on site. His practical knowledge and quiet authority gradually winning over even the most skeptical team members. And when the day came that the newly adapted section was completed ahead of schedule, significantly cutting project costs and preventing further losses, the team could no longer deny Owen's worth. Standing at the edge of the bustling construction site, Owen felt pride swell warmly in his chest. Elena approached quietly, eyes bright with admiration. "You did it," she said softly, warmth saturating every word. "You proved everyone wrong." He shook his head humbly, glancing back at the busy crew. "I didn't do it alone. I had someone believing in me when nobody else did." Elena smiled gently, her eyes holding a tenderness she reserved only for him. "You've more than earned it, Owen." As Stephen walked stiffly past, grudging respect barely hidden behind his stern expression, Owen finally felt a true sense of belonging. His ideas had not only succeeded, they'd shown everyone the kind of man he truly was. Not just a mechanic or an outsider, but someone whose quiet, steady confidence had quietly saved them all. A hushed anticipation filled the grand conference hall, polished marble floors gleaming softly beneath the elegant chandeliers overhead. Employees and executives gathered around the stage, conversations muted, eyes curious and expectant as Elena stepped gracefully to the podium, her poised confidence filling the space with quiet authority. Owen stood nervously at the side, heart pounding gently in his chest, hands tucked awkwardly into the pockets of his borrowed suit. He'd never felt entirely comfortable under the spotlight, but today felt especially surreal. He knew Elena had important news to share, but she'd deliberately kept the details vague, simply assuring him it was a step forward, something he'd earned. Elena smiled warmly, scanning the attentive faces around her, her eyes pausing briefly on Owen with quiet pride. "Thank you all for being here today," she began smoothly, her voice clear and assured. "As you know, our recent project faced considerable setbacks, challenges we overcame not through traditional methods, but by embracing new perspectives." Stephen stood rigidly near the front, jaw clenched tightly, his gaze fixed coldly on Elena, suspicion already darkening his expression. Owen felt his chest tighten slightly, sensing the impending tension even from a distance. Elena continued confidently, her voice resonant and steady. "This shift in perspective, these fresh insights, were possible because of one person's practical expertise and courage to propose solutions others overlooked. That person, as you all now know, is Owen Mitchell." Owen's heart quickened as every eye in the room turned toward him, curiosity mingling with genuine admiration for most, but sharp skepticism radiating from Stephen. Elena's voice softened slightly, sincerity coloring her words. "It's because of Owen's invaluable contributions, integrity, and determination that I've made an important decision. Effective immediately, Owen Mitchell will officially become my partner in overseeing this critical project with full authority and equal standing." An audible ripple of surprise and applause filled the room, murmurs of approval and curiosity quickly rising. Owen felt his face flush warmly, pride mingled with disbelief at Elena's trust and generosity. Yet, as his eyes found Stephen in the crowd, any fleeting joy dimmed. Stephen's face was dark with fury, jaw clenched so tightly Owen could see the muscles tense, eyes burning with resentment and envy. After the announcement, Stephen quickly cornered Elena, his voice sharp with restrained anger. "You're making a mistake, Elena," he hissed quietly, barely controlling his temper. "Promoting Mitchell to partner? You're letting your emotions blind you to reality." Elena stood firm, her calm voice coldly authoritative, eyes unflinching. "I trust Owen, Stephen. He's earned every ounce of respect and trust I've given him. My decision is final." Stephen stepped closer, voice lowered to a venomous whisper. "You're going to regret this." Mark my words, Mitchell will bring this company down, and you'll have only yourself to blame." She held his gaze steadily, unwavering in her conviction. "Be very careful, Stephen. Your bitterness says far more about you than it ever could about Owen." Stephen turned sharply on his heel, storming away without another word, tension thickening the air behind him. Across the room, Owen watched quietly, unsettled by Stephen's obvious hostility. Yet, when Elena approached him moments later, a gentle smile brightening her face, he felt reassured. "You deserve this, Owen," she said warmly, eyes softening tenderly. "Don't ever doubt that." Owen nodded silently, deeply grateful, yet unable to shake the unease Stephen's resentment stirred within him. He knew Elena's announcement had changed everything, propelling him into the heart of the company. But it had also placed him directly in Stephen's path, in a struggle he knew was far from over. Stephen sat alone in his dimly lit office, the evening shadows stretching long and sinister across the floor. His fingers tapped restlessly against the polished surface of his desk, his jaw clenched tight, bitterness simmering dangerously beneath his carefully maintained facade. Elena's announcement had been the final insult, watching Owen Mitchell, the outsider mechanic, rise rapidly to a position that Stephen believed should have rightfully been his own. He leaned forward sharply, pulling open the drawer of his desk, retrieving a confidential file he'd meticulously compiled. His eyes narrowed with malicious intent as he flipped through pages detailing critical construction checkpoints, inspection protocols, and safety certifications, areas where even the smallest slip could trigger devastating consequences for Owen's newfound reputation. With deliberate precision, Stephen marked specific details, identifying areas most vulnerable to manipulation. He knew the site well, where paperwork could vanish unnoticed, where critical inspections could quietly fail without immediate detection. He carefully mapped out his plan, bitterness fueling every calculated step. The next morning, Stephen arrived early at the construction site, moving unnoticed through the busy crews preparing for the day's work. He quietly slipped into the temporary project office, heart racing with quiet determination as he discreetly removed vital inspection documents and safety certifications, hiding them carefully in a locked drawer under Owen's desk. He paused only briefly, a flicker of conscience quickly smothered by envy and resentment. This was necessary, he assured himself bitterly. Mitchell didn't belong, and Stephen was determined to prove it, no matter the cost. Hours later, panic erupted across the construction site as safety inspectors descended without warning, reviewing paperwork meticulously, their faces grim. Owen stood helplessly amidst the chaos, confusion etched deeply into his expression. "Mitchell, we have a serious issue here," one inspector announced sternly, brandishing a clipboard. "Vital certifications and inspection records are missing, and we've found multiple violations. This negligence is severe. It could halt your entire project." Owen's heart dropped painfully, eyes wide with disbelief. "There must be some mistake. I checked all of that myself. Everything was in order." Stephen stepped forward smoothly, voice dripping with feigned concern. "Owen, this is exactly why we have protocols. Clearly your lack of experience is showing." Elena arrived swiftly, confusion and concern coloring her eyes. She quickly took in the scene, turning sharply to Owen. "Owen, tell me what happened." Before Owen could answer, Stephen interrupted coldly. "I'll tell you what happened, Elena. Negligence. Missing certifications, failed inspections. This is precisely the incompetence I warned you about." Owen shook his head vehemently, desperation coloring his voice. "Elena, I swear to you, those records were complete. Someone must have—" Stephen cut him off abruptly, eyes sharp with accusation. "Don't embarrass yourself further, Mitchell. Take responsibility for your mistakes." Elena's gaze shifted carefully between the two men, uncertainty darkening her expression. Owen's heart clenched painfully, realizing suddenly the depth of Stephen's betrayal. He knew he'd been set up, framed deliberately to fail, positioned as negligent and incompetent. Yet amidst the chaos, Owen met Elena's eyes, silently pleading for her trust. Elena hesitated, clearly torn, before nodding firmly. "We'll investigate this thoroughly," she stated decisively. "I won't rush to judgment without evidence." Stephen's jaw tightened subtly, frustration flickering in his eyes at Elena's unwavering defense. But Owen knew, even as the inspectors moved forward ominously, even as whispers spread swiftly across the site, he wasn't alone. Stephen's sabotage had struck hard, but Elena's belief in him remained intact. Owen straightened slightly, determined now, more than ever, to prove his innocence, and expose the bitter truth Stephen was desperately trying to hide. Owen sat quietly at his desk, staring blankly at the pile of documents and reports spread across the polished surface, each paper a harsh reminder of the damage Stephen's sabotage had inflicted. The whispers and sidelong glances from co-workers throughout the day had steadily chipped away at the quiet confidence he'd worked so hard to build. Trust, respect, and credibility, all painstakingly earned, had seemingly vanished overnight. He ran a weary hand through his hair, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. Every attempt to clarify the situation seemed only to deepen suspicion. The seeds of doubt Stephen had sown had taken root quickly, poisoning the perception of Owen's character and competence. His heart tightened sharply as he remembered the betrayal in Elena's eyes, the quiet hesitation she couldn't fully hide despite her steadfast support. It was clear even she was beginning to question him despite her efforts to trust. The office door opened softly, pulling Owen from his troubled thoughts. Elena stepped inside, concern etched deeply into her features. She approached quietly, her eyes searching his face carefully before speaking gently. "Owen," she began softly, "I know this isn't easy, but we'll get through this. I promise you. The truth will come out." He met her gaze wearily, frustration and vulnerability blending in his eyes. "Elena, my reputation is destroyed. Every person here thinks I'm incompetent, or worse, dishonest. Maybe it's time I step away. Maybe Stephen was right. Maybe I never belonged here in the first place." Elena moved closer, genuine hurt flashing briefly in her eyes. "Don't say that, Owen. You've proven yourself over and over. Stephen's lies can't change who you truly are." Owen exhaled slowly, doubt clouding his expression, his voice barely more than a whisper. "But what if staying only hurts the company further? I can't let that happen. Not after everything you've done for me." She shook her head gently, determination firming her voice. "Running away only lets Stephen win. I refuse to let him destroy you or us. I believe in you, Owen, more than ever, but I can't fight this alone." He stared quietly into her earnest eyes, torn between his instinct to protect Elena and the desperation to reclaim his dignity. The weight of responsibility pressed painfully upon him, each passing second reinforcing the painful choice he faced. "I don't know if I can keep fighting, Elena," he confessed quietly, voice thick with exhaustion and frustration. "I'm tired of defending myself from lies. I'm tired of feeling like I have to prove I belong here." Elena reached out gently, touching his hand reassuringly, her eyes pleading softly. "You don't have to prove anything, not to me. I see who you really are, Owen. Please don't give up. Not now, not when we're so close." He hesitated, searching her eyes carefully, seeing nothing but sincerity and unwavering trust. Elena's faith in him stood firm, a quiet lighthouse in the storm of doubt threatening to consume him entirely. Finally, he nodded slowly, resolve gradually replacing despair. "You're right. I can't let Stephen break me. Not when you've believed in me every step of the way." Elena squeezed his hand warmly, relief and admiration softening her gaze. "We'll clear your name together, Owen. Trust me. The truth will prevail." As she stepped away, leaving him alone with his thoughts, Owen felt his earlier despair lift slightly, replaced by a quiet determination. He'd been pushed into a corner, but Elena's unwavering faith reminded him he wasn't alone. Now, despite the heavy uncertainty still clouding his future, Owen knew one thing clearly: he wouldn't resign. Instead, he'd stand and fight, reclaiming the truth he knew he deserved. Late into the night, Elena sat quietly in her dimly lit office, documents scattered across her expansive desk, each paper holding small clues, fragments of a truth she was determined to uncover. The city lights glittered softly outside, yet tonight their beauty went unnoticed. Her eyes, sharp with determination, carefully studied every record, inspection report, and project update, methodically piecing together a hidden story, one carefully concealed beneath layers of deceit. Hours passed in focused silence, tension building slowly within her, until finally, clarity struck sharply like lightning through darkness. Elena's breath caught tightly in her chest as the truth crystallized before her eyes. The subtle discrepancies, missing records, altered paperwork. It was undeniable. Stephen Brooks had meticulously orchestrated Owen's downfall, driven by envy and bitter resentment. Early the next morning, Elena stood firmly in the crowded conference room, the entire senior staff gathered urgently at her request. Owen lingered anxiously at the edge of the group, confused yet quietly hopeful, his heart quickening as Elena stepped forward, voice clear and commanding. "I've gathered you all here because a serious betrayal of trust has occurred," Elena began steadily, eyes focused sharply on Stephen. Owen Mitchell was accused of negligence and incompetence, accusations deliberately fabricated. Whispers rippled urgently through the room, startled glances passing swiftly between co-workers. Stephen's face paled slightly, but he quickly masked his reaction, arrogance firmly in place as he faced Elena coldly. "This is ridiculous, Elena. You're grasping at straws." Elena lifted a folder, holding it firmly before the gathered team, her eyes unwavering and fierce. "These are original records and documents you deliberately hid, altered, or removed. Your plan was meticulous, Stephen, but thankfully not foolproof." Stephen shook his head dismissively, jaw clenched tight with defiance. "You're making a fool of yourself, Elena. Why would I sabotage the very company I helped build?" "Because your jealousy outweighed your loyalty," Elena replied sharply, voice steady and strong. "You couldn't bear to see Owen succeed, so you risked everything to destroy him. You underestimated me, Stephen, and you underestimated the truth." The room fell silent, tension thickening almost unbearably. Elena took a step closer, voice firm and decisive. "Your actions have damaged not only Owen's reputation, but our company's integrity. I'm demanding your immediate resignation." Stephen's eyes flashed angrily, a moment of unmasked fury before composure returned, voice dangerously quiet. "You'll regret this, Elena. You're choosing the wrong side." Elena stood tall, authority and courage radiating clearly from her stance. "I'm choosing integrity, Stephen, something you've clearly forgotten." Stephen hesitated, his defiance weakening visibly under Elena's unwavering gaze. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded, pride shattered beneath her fierce resolve. "Fine," he muttered bitterly, turning stiffly toward the exit. "But don't fool yourself, this isn't over." As Stephen stormed from the room, silence hung heavily, emotions raw and uncertain. Elena turned quietly toward Owen, whose eyes reflected profound relief and gratitude. "I promised you the truth would prevail," Elena said softly, stepping closer, sincerity clear in her gentle voice. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you sooner." Owen shook his head gently, eyes warm with emotion. "You did more than enough, Elena. You believed in me, even when no one else did." Around them, employees exchanged quiet murmurs of respect and admiration. Elena met their gazes confidently, knowing trust had been restored, justice finally served. Owen's reputation, she knew, would recover. Yet more importantly, Elena knew she'd proven something invaluable. Integrity and truth always mattered more than power and envy. In the wake of Stephen's departure, Elena felt a quiet sense of triumph. She'd protected the company, defended Owen, and honored her values. And now, finally, they could rebuild. not just their project, but their future together. The soft glow of the evening sun warmed Elena's spacious office, the city skyline beyond the window painted in shades of gentle gold and amber. Owen stood quietly, hands resting in his pockets, still processing everything that had transpired. Stephen's betrayal, Elena's unwavering belief in him, and the sudden restoration of his reputation. Relief mingled with cautious optimism, creating an emotional storm he struggled to navigate. Elena approached quietly, breaking the comfortable silence, her eyes gentle yet serious. "Owen, I know these past weeks have been incredibly difficult, but through it all, you've shown remarkable strength and integrity. You've proven beyond any doubt your value, not just to this company, but to me personally." He met her gaze silently, sensing something deeper in her tone, a significance he couldn't fully grasp. Elena hesitated, choosing her next words carefully, sincerity evident in her voice. "I didn't ask you here just to reflect on recent events. There's something important I want to discuss." Curiosity and nervous anticipation tightened Owen's chest. "I'm listening," he replied quietly, heart beating quicker. Elena took a deep breath, her eyes steady and determined. "I want you to join me as an official business partner, not just in name, Owen. I'm offering you substantial equity in the company. You've more than earned this." Owen's breath caught sharply, surprise flooding his expression. His heart pounded loudly in his ears, disbelief immediately clouding his thoughts. "Elena," he began slowly, uncertainty thickening his voice. "Are you sure? Equity? Partnership? That's not, I'm honored, but—" Elena stepped closer, voice firm yet tender. "You're doubting yourself again, Owen. Please don't. Your instincts saved this company from disaster. Your courage and integrity inspired everyone around you, including me." Owen shook his head slightly, eyes filled with hesitation and genuine vulnerability. "I'm not a business person, Elena. I build things, I fix things, but running a company, owning part of it, that's so far beyond me." Elena reached out gently, touching his arm reassuringly. "You don't need to be a conventional businessman to be successful. You've already shown that your perspective, your honesty, practicality, and sincerity are exactly what we need." He sighed deeply, still visibly conflicted, looking away toward the golden-lit city below. "It's a huge responsibility. What if I let you down?" Elena turned him gently, forcing his eyes back to hers, warmth radiating from her sincere gaze. "Owen, you've never once let me down. Every step, every challenge. I've seen the way you carry yourself. You're more qualified than most people I know, precisely because you don't chase power. You genuinely care. That's rare." He held her gaze silently, heart racing as her words penetrated the layers of doubt he'd carefully built. He saw clearly how deeply she believed in him, not just as an employee or a colleague, but as someone she genuinely respected, someone she trusted. Still, caution lingered in his eyes, voice quiet yet steady. "I need a little time to think this through, Elena. It's not a decision I can make lightly." Elena smiled gently, understanding reflected warmly in her expression. "Take all the time you need. Just know, Owen, this offer isn't charity, it's recognition. You've earned this." As Owen left her office, stepping quietly into the soft twilight, the magnitude of Elena's offer settled heavily upon him. His doubts were strong, his fears very real. Yet beneath the uncertainty, something new stirred within him, a quiet spark of belief ignited by Elena's unwavering trust. He knew his decision would shape not only his future, but Mia's as well. Elena's partnership offer wasn't merely a business opportunity. It was a chance at a life he'd only dreamed of, one where he finally felt worthy, truly accepted. And for now, despite the doubts, Owen allowed himself the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to embrace it. The cool night air whispered gently through the open window, softly rustling the thin curtains of their small, modest apartment. Owen sat silently at the kitchen table, eyes fixed blankly on the important papers Elena had given him earlier, the formal offer of partnership. Doubt still clung stubbornly to him, even as the opportunity shimmered brightly in front of his eyes. Mia padded quietly into the kitchen, clutching her teddy bear close, concern evident in her sleepy gaze. "Daddy, why aren't you sleeping yet?" she asked softly, climbing onto the chair beside him. Owen offered her a gentle, reassuring smile, carefully hiding the turmoil that swirled within him. "Just thinking, sweetheart," he murmured quietly, running a hand affectionately through her tousled hair. Mia studied the papers spread across the table, curiosity sharpening her tired eyes. "Is it about the nice lady's offer? To help run the company?" Owen sighed softly, nodding slowly. "Yeah, it is. It's a big job, Mia. I'm just not sure I'm ready." Mia tilted her head thoughtfully, her voice gentle yet surprisingly wise. "Why not, Daddy? You've already helped her so much. You always know what to do." He smiled gently, touched by her innocent certainty. "But running a company is different, sweetheart. I'm good with my hands, good at building things, but this job needs someone really smart, someone who knows business." Mia shook her head firmly, a stubborn determination coloring her soft features. "But Daddy, you taught me smart isn't just books and numbers. It's doing the right thing. You always do the right thing." His heart clenched softly at her earnest words, pride mingling with the deep love he felt for his daughter. "Mia, I just don't want to let anyone down, especially you." She reached over gently, placing her small hand softly atop his own, her eyes earnest and deeply sincere. "You could never let me down. You always told me we can do anything if we believe in ourselves, remember?" Owen's throat tightened painfully, emotion swelling sharply within him, warmth spreading slowly through his chest. Mia's simple, honest words had broken through the doubts that had clouded his mind, revealing a truth he'd refused to see clearly. "You're right," he whispered softly, squeezing her small hand gently, a newfound certainty slowly brightening his gaze. "Maybe it's time I started believing the things I've always told you." Mia smiled brightly, her voice clear and full of innocent conviction. "You're going to be the best partner she ever had, Daddy. I just know it." As he hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth of her unwavering faith, Owen knew the decision had finally been made. He would step forward into Elena's offer, not because he felt entirely ready, but because Mia's quiet confidence reminded him he'd already earned his place. The next morning, as sunlight gently illuminated the office where Elena awaited his answer, Owen stepped confidently inside, a quiet resolve now steadying him. "I accept your offer, Elena," he announced softly, sincerity and quiet strength clear in his voice. "Mia reminded me that believing in ourselves is sometimes the hardest thing to do, but it's also the most important." Elena's eyes softened warmly, deep admiration clear in her gentle smile. "She's a wise little girl. I always knew you'd make the right choice." Standing there, feeling pride replace doubt, Owen understood he hadn't merely accepted a partnership. He'd embraced a future built on courage, trust, and the belief his daughter had quietly gifted him. And for the first time in years, Owen felt truly ready to face whatever lay ahead. The conference room buzzed with whispered conversations, curiosity and tension threading quietly through the gathered employees. Owen stood silently beside Elena at the front of the room, a quiet uncertainty tightening his chest. He'd known this announcement would be challenging, but facing the skeptical, questioning eyes of Elena's seasoned team brought back the familiar sting of doubt he'd hoped to leave behind. Elena cleared her throat, her voice calm yet strong, easily commanding attention. "Thank you all for gathering. I have an important announcement regarding the future direction of our company." The murmurs quieted gradually, anticipation filling the silence. Owen met Elena's steady gaze, drawing quiet strength from her reassuring presence. She nodded encouragingly before continuing, her voice firm and unwavering. "I'm pleased to formally announce Owen Mitchell as my official business partner," she stated clearly. eyes scanning the faces before her. His exceptional contributions, leadership, and integrity have earned him substantial equity and an equal voice in our company's future. Immediate reactions rippled visibly through the room: surprise, cautious approval, but also thinly concealed doubt and disbelief. Owen could clearly see uncertainty flickering in the eyes of several senior managers, their skepticism palpable. He forced himself to remain steady, refusing to waver beneath the pressure. A senior executive, clearly uncomfortable, raised his hand slowly. "Elena, we appreciate Owen's recent contributions, but partnership is a substantial step. Does he truly have the experience to manage at this level?" Elena met the question firmly, unwavering conviction coloring her voice. "Experience isn't defined solely by corporate tenure. Owen has proven his value repeatedly, rescuing projects, reducing costs, and solving challenges no one else could. I trust him implicitly." Another voice interjected sharply from the back, skepticism clear. "But what about Stephen's accusations? Owen's credentials were questioned severely. How can we trust someone who's faced serious doubts?" Owen felt his heart quicken, the sting of past accusations momentarily overwhelming him, but Elena responded swiftly, her tone sharp and resolute. "Those accusations were investigated thoroughly and proven false. Owen's integrity is beyond reproach. Any lingering doubt is rooted solely in misunderstanding or personal bias." Her firm defense seemed to shift the mood slightly, several employees nodding quietly in cautious agreement. Owen glanced briefly at Elena, gratitude flooding warmly through him, steadying his anxious heart. She stood unwaveringly by his side, her support unwavering. Another senior manager spoke quietly, voice thoughtful and measured. "Owen, we understand Elena's confidence, but do you genuinely believe you're ready for the responsibilities that come with partnership?" The room fell silent, eyes turning expectantly toward Owen. He took a deep breath, feeling the quiet weight of their doubts, yet knowing he must speak honestly. "I understand your concerns," he began quietly, sincerity resonating clearly. "I don't pretend to have all the answers, but what I bring is perspective, honesty, and a willingness to learn. I'm here not just because Elena trusts me, but because I've earned this chance. I won't promise perfection, but I promise dedication." Quiet murmurs of approval rose softly around the room, acceptance gradually replacing skepticism. Elena smiled gently, pride clear in her gaze. As the meeting concluded, Elena stepped close, her voice soft and reassuring. "You handled that perfectly, Owen. You showed them exactly why you belong here." Owen smiled slightly, quiet relief filling his chest. "Thank you for standing with me." Elena gently squeezed his hand, sincerity shining warmly in her eyes. "Always. You've earned this, Owen, and together we'll prove it to everyone." Standing there beside Elena, feeling her quiet strength bolster his own, Owen knew that despite initial doubts, they had taken the first crucial steps toward a future built on mutual trust, respect, and a partnership stronger than either had anticipated. The grand hall buzzed with excited murmurs as industry leaders, investors, and media representatives filled the venue. Soft lights illuminated the sleek architectural model at center stage, showcasing the project that Owen had tirelessly overseen. Elena stood close to his side, her eyes shining with pride and confidence as she gently squeezed his arm in quiet encouragement. Owen felt a blend of nervous anticipation and cautious excitement. Months of hard work, late nights, and relentless dedication had led to this critical moment. Despite initial doubts and lingering whispers of skepticism, today was his chance to silence every critic once and for all. Elena stepped forward first, addressing the gathering with graceful authority. "We are thrilled to present a project that reflects not only innovation and quality, but the vision and practical brilliance of Owen Mitchell, my partner and friend." Owen took a deep breath, stepping forward confidently as applause filled the hall. He felt every eye on him, curiosity and admiration blending in their gazes. He began to speak, his voice clear, steady, and genuine. "When I first joined this company," he began sincerely, "I had doubts about myself, my abilities, and whether I truly belonged here, but working alongside Elena and the incredible team behind this project, I learned that every obstacle is a chance to grow stronger. This development represents more than just a business venture. It symbolizes perseverance, trust, and the strength that comes from believing in people." As he spoke, Owen moved closer to the detailed model, carefully pointing out key features and innovations he'd personally championed, simple yet elegant solutions that had saved the project both time and cost. The more he explained, the clearer it became to everyone in attendance that Owen's leadership had been transformative. As his presentation concluded, the room erupted into genuine applause, louder and more enthusiastic than before. Elena joined him again, her smile warm and genuine. "This success is the direct result of Owen's remarkable vision and dedication," she affirmed proudly. "I'm honored to share this partnership with him." Afterward, influential investors and executives eagerly approached Owen, their initial skepticism clearly replaced by genuine admiration and respect. Each handshake, each sincere congratulation, seemed to erase lingering doubts and insecurities he'd carried silently for so long. Eventually, a prominent industry expert approached, shaking Owen's hand warmly, admiration clear in his voice. "Mr. Mitchell, your approach was refreshingly practical, remarkably effective. It's clear Elena made the right choice partnering with you. Congratulations." Owen nodded humbly, gratitude and pride mingling quietly in his chest. Elena watched him from nearby, a gentle warmth softening her eyes. Later, standing quietly together near the stage, Elena touched Owen's shoulder gently, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "You did it, Owen," she said softly. "They finally see what I saw in you from the start." He turned toward her, deeply moved. "None of this would have happened without your belief in me, Elena." She shook her head gently, sincerity shining in her eyes. "You earned every bit of this success. Tonight was your moment, Owen. Own it fully." As Owen looked out over the room, finally seeing acceptance and respect reflected clearly in every gaze, he felt something deeper settle within him, a sense of peace, fulfillment, and quiet confidence. The critics had finally been silenced, replaced by voices of admiration, respect, and approval. In this quiet moment of triumph, Owen finally understood the true value of the journey he'd taken, not just the professional success or acclaim, but the deeper victory of believing fully in himself, guided by Elena's unwavering trust and support. It was a realization more powerful, more satisfying than he had ever imagined. The gentle glow of twilight spread softly through Elena's penthouse, bathing the elegant room in warm shades of amber and gold. The celebratory buzz of earlier in the evening had faded, leaving only the quiet comfort of a shared moment between Owen and Elena. They sat close together on the plush sofa, the city lights twinkling gently outside, mirroring the warmth quietly blossoming within the room. A sense of peaceful triumph lingered in the air, yet something deeper, unspoken, had slowly grown between them, impossible to ignore any longer. Elena broke the silence first, her voice gentle, yet slightly hesitant, revealing rare vulnerability beneath her usual confidence. "Owen, tonight was incredible. Watching you speak, seeing how far you've come, I felt more proud than I ever have before," she admitted softly, her gaze sincere, openly affectionate. Owen met her eyes quietly, warmth and genuine tenderness softening his expression. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Elena. Your trust and support changed everything for me." She shifted closer, her voice growing softer, more vulnerable. "It wasn't just about believing in you professionally, Owen. There's always been something more, something deeper between us. I think we've both felt it." Owen exhaled softly, his heartbeat quickening gently, emotion swelling warmly within his chest. "I have felt it," he admitted quietly, sincerity clear in his gentle voice. "But I wasn't sure if it was right to act on it. You've already done so much for me. I never wanted to complicate things." Elena smiled softly, gently touching his hand, her warmth unmistakable. "You've never been a complication, Owen. You've become a strength in my life, a strength I never realized I needed. But it's true. I hesitated too. Mixing business and personal feelings is risky, but now I realize you're worth that risk." Their eyes held quietly, each sensing the delicate balance between their professional relationship and the undeniable feelings growing between them. Owen squeezed her hand gently, sincerity deeply coloring his voice. "I feel the same way, Elena. You're the reason I'm here, professionally and personally. I've never trusted anyone as much as I trust you." Elena leaned closer, her voice barely more than a whisper, tenderness saturating every word. "Then maybe we owe it to ourselves to carefully explore this, slowly, cautiously, but honestly. I want to see where this could lead." He nodded quietly, heart racing warmly, a quiet joy and relief filling him. "I'd like that very much." For a long, quiet moment, they simply sat close together, absorbing the warmth and comfort that had quietly settled between them, the promise of something more stirring deeply in their hearts. Elena rested her head gently against Owen's shoulder, her voice soft, yet filled with quiet optimism. "Whatever happens, Owen, we'll face it together," she promised gently. "You've already proven that together we're stronger." Owen wrapped an arm gently around her, quietly drawing her closer, warmth and tenderness flowing easily between them. "Then let's take this slowly, Elena. Let's do this right." She smiled softly, warmth and happiness reflected clearly in her gentle expression. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As the city lights glittered softly beyond the window, Owen and Elena knew they stood at the beginning of a delicate, beautiful journey, one filled with cautious hope, genuine affection, and quiet strength. And for both of them, in that quiet moment of mutual honesty, it felt exactly like home. Sunlight streamed softly through the wide office windows, illuminating Owen's focused expression as he reviewed documents spread neatly across his desk. Though the title on his door now read "Partner," Owen had never forgotten the journey that brought him here. Every success he'd achieved only strengthened his determination to open doors for others who faced the same barriers he'd once known. He sat back slowly, thinking carefully about the ambitious proposal he'd prepared, a program designed specifically to give opportunities to skilled workers from modest backgrounds. It was deeply personal to him, a reflection of everything he believed in, yet Owen knew the idea could face resistance. It was unconventional, risky, but essential. A gentle knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Elena stepped inside, her warm smile brightening the room instantly. She glanced curiously at the papers before him, sensing their importance from his thoughtful expression. "What's on your mind, Owen?" she asked gently, moving closer. He hesitated briefly, uncertainty flickering briefly through his eyes. "It's something I've been wanting to do since you first gave me a chance, Elena. I've drawn up a program to hire talented, skilled individuals who might not have traditional degrees or prestigious backgrounds, people overlooked simply because they lack connections or formal education." Elena took the papers carefully, reviewing them thoughtfully, nodding as she understood his vision. Owen watched closely, his heart quickening slightly with anxiety as she read. Finally, she looked up, eyes softening warmly. "Owen, this is wonderful," she said sincerely, admiration clear in her voice. "It's exactly what our company needs, a return to values, practical skills, and genuine opportunity. This initiative could change countless lives." Relief and quiet pride spread warmly through Owen's chest. "I know what it's like to feel invisible, Elena, to have talent but no opportunity. I just want others to know someone believes in them the way you believed in me." Elena touched his hand gently, sincere warmth deepening her voice. "Then let's make it happen. I'll support you completely. It's time we showed everyone that success isn't defined by background, but by character. Over the following weeks, Owen's program launched with careful planning and genuine enthusiasm. His dedication quickly became infectious, spreading optimism and renewed energy throughout the company. Employees who once questioned his abilities now openly admired his vision and commitment to meaningful change. Owen personally met each candidate, seeing beyond their modest circumstances, recognizing their raw talent and integrity. Soon, skilled workers from diverse backgrounds were given opportunities they'd previously only dreamed of. Elena proudly watched as Owen tirelessly mentored each new employee, offering guidance, patience, and encouragement, quietly transforming lives. One evening, as Owen and Elena stood together watching workers proudly complete their first project, Elena turned quietly toward him, her eyes shining warmly. "You've done something incredible here, Owen," she said softly, admiration clear in her gentle voice. "You've given hope and opportunity where there was none." He met her gaze quietly, emotion softening his eyes. "I couldn't have done any of this without your support, Elena. You believed in me first. You showed me the power of giving someone a real chance." She smiled warmly, squeezing his hand gently, sincerity deeply coloring her voice. "You earned every bit of that chance, Owen, and now you're teaching others how to believe in themselves, too." Standing quietly together in the soft evening glow, Owen knew he'd finally found his true purpose. His journey had begun with struggle, doubt, and uncertainty. But now, guided by Elena's unwavering support and belief, he was able to offer others the same opportunities that had forever changed his own life. And in doing so, Owen realized he'd found more than success. He'd discovered genuine fulfillment. Warm sunlight cascaded gently through the windows of the cozy house, illuminating the empty rooms that smelled faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings. Owen stood quietly in the spacious living room, eyes carefully taking in every detail: the polished wooden floors, the welcoming fireplace, and the soft, neutral walls waiting patiently for memories to fill them. He drew a deep, steadying breath, emotion swelling warmly in his chest. After so many nights spent in cramped motels and tiny apartments, the idea of finally providing Mia with a real home, a stable home, felt overwhelming, yet deeply rewarding. Outside, he heard Elena's gentle voice speaking softly to Mia, their laughter drifting lightly through the open front door. Owen moved quietly to the window, smiling as he watched Mia run happily across the lush green grass, eyes wide with wonder and joy. Elena followed closely, her gentle warmth and affection clear in every glance she offered Mia. The sight of their easy bond, the happiness radiating from his daughter's face, brought a quiet lump to Owen's throat. After everything they'd been through, struggle, loss, uncertainty, he had finally fulfilled his promise. He had given Mia the stability, comfort, and safety she deserved. "Daddy," Mia called excitedly, racing inside, eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Is this really ours? Is this really home?" Owen knelt down, opening his arms wide as she rushed toward him, hugging him tightly, her tiny heart pounding joyfully against his chest. "Yes, sweetheart," he whispered gently, voice thick with emotion. "This is home." She pulled back slightly, eyes bright and earnest. "Forever?" He nodded softly, sincerity and quiet promise filling his voice. "Forever, just like I promised." Elena stepped inside quietly, watching the tender scene, emotion shining gently in her eyes. "You've done something incredible here, Owen," she said softly. "She's so lucky to have you." Owen met Elena's gaze, deep gratitude evident in his eyes. "I wouldn't be standing here without you, Elena. You gave me the chance I needed to keep my promise to her." Elena shook her head gently, stepping closer. "You earned this, Owen. Every step, every challenge, you fought hard for this life." Later, as Mia explored each room excitedly, claiming spaces for imaginary adventures and cherished toys, Elena stood quietly beside Owen in the bright, inviting kitchen, her voice gentle yet sincere. "This is more than just a home, Owen. It's proof of everything you've accomplished. You've built a beautiful future for Mia, for yourself." Owen nodded quietly, heart swelling warmly. "For all of us," he replied softly, eyes sincere. "None of this would have been possible without you believing in me, Elena." She smiled gently, touching his hand reassuringly. "Believing in you was always easy. Watching you achieve this, giving Mia the life you promised, that's truly special." As evening slowly settled around their new home, Owen sat quietly on the porch, watching Mia play happily beneath the softly glowing street lamps. Elena sat beside him, her presence comforting and steady. He reached for her hand, feeling quiet joy and deep contentment fill his heart. In this peaceful moment, Owen knew clearly that the past struggles had led him here, to stability, fulfillment, and a chance to finally build something lasting. Looking toward the future with hope and quiet confidence, Owen understood deeply that his greatest accomplishment wasn't merely professional success or financial stability, but creating a safe, loving home for Mia. And alongside Elena, he knew this was only the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. The glittering ballroom was filled with a gentle hum of conversation, the elegant chandeliers above casting a soft, warm glow over the impeccably dressed attendees. Industry leaders, investors, and respected colleagues mingled easily, celebrating another year of remarkable success. Owen stood at the edge of the stage, heart quietly racing, knowing this moment was more than just a speech. It was a chance to finally acknowledge the person whose belief had transformed his entire life. Across the room, Elena watched him with quiet pride, her gentle smile reassuring even from a distance. He took a deep breath, stepped forward confidently toward the podium, and felt the eyes of the entire audience turn toward him. Owen glanced briefly at Elena, drawing strength from her steady, unwavering gaze, before beginning to speak, voice calm, yet deeply sincere. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This year has been remarkable, not just for our projects or our profits, but because of something far more important." He paused slightly, emotion tightening gently in his throat as he continued. "Many of you know my story by now. I was at the lowest point in my life, unemployed, struggling, uncertain how I could provide for my daughter, and then, in one moment of chance, I met someone who changed everything." The room fell quietly attentive, curiosity deepening as Owen's sincere voice resonated clearly. "Elena Hart took a risk on me, a complete stranger whose background didn't match the conventional standards. She trusted me when no one else did. She saw potential where others saw limitations, and because of her courage and her kindness, I'm standing here tonight." He glanced at Elena again, warmth and gratitude clear in his gaze, his voice steadying with quiet conviction. "Every success I've had is because Elena believed I deserved a chance. She gave me something more valuable than opportunity. She gave me confidence, support, and the courage to believe in myself." Elena's eyes softened, visibly touched, emotion clear in her gentle expression, as the room turned briefly toward her, nodding respectfully, murmurs of admiration rippling quietly through the crowd. Owen's voice deepened with sincerity, his gratitude profound. "Tonight, I want everyone here to know the true measure of Elena's leadership and compassion. She isn't just a brilliant businesswoman. She's someone who genuinely cares, someone who sees beyond credentials and titles, recognizing the strength of character beneath." He paused, voice thickening slightly, sincerity raw and heartfelt. "Elena, I can't ever fully repay you for what you've done, but please know I'm forever grateful. My life and my daughter's life have been forever changed because of you." The room filled with genuine applause, sincere admiration clear in every face. Elena stepped forward gracefully, joining Owen on stage, her eyes shimmering gently with emotion as she took his hand warmly. "Owen, "You owe me nothing," she said softly, her voice resonating clearly throughout the room. "You built your success with your own courage and integrity. I merely recognized what was already there." The applause grew louder, more heartfelt, as everyone in the room recognized the depth of their mutual respect and admiration. Later, as the gala continued, colleagues and industry leaders approached Owen and Elena, expressing genuine respect and appreciation for the honesty and warmth they'd shared. Standing quietly together later, Owen turned toward Elena, sincere warmth filling his eyes. "I meant every word tonight, Elena. You truly changed everything for me." She smiled gently, touching his hand softly, sincerity deeply coloring her voice. "And you changed me too, Owen. You reminded me why I do this work, to help others see the potential within themselves." Standing beneath the glittering lights, amidst the quiet celebration of mutual trust and respect, Owen knew clearly he hadn't just honored Elena tonight. He'd finally fully honored himself, embracing the truth of his worth, thanks entirely to her belief. And it felt truly like a beautiful new beginning. Soft moonlight gently illuminated the quiet terrace overlooking the city, casting a gentle silvery glow across the tranquil scene. Owen and Elena stood quietly together, gazing thoughtfully out at the glittering skyline, the distant lights of the city sparkling gently beneath the velvet night sky. The peaceful moment was filled with quiet gratitude and deep reflection, a comforting silence that spoke volumes between them. Elena turned slowly, her gaze soft and thoughtful, gently studying Owen's serene expression. "Do you ever think about how far we've come, Owen?" she asked softly, her voice warm and reflective. Owen glanced gently toward her, a tender smile touching his lips as memories flooded warmly through him, memories of hardship and triumph, pain and joy, struggle and quiet victory. "Every day," he replied softly, sincerity clear in his gentle voice. "There was a time I didn't know if I could ever find my way out of the darkness. Then, suddenly, you were there, and everything changed." Elena nodded softly, emotion deepening her eyes. "I never imagined when you pulled me from that car crash, risking your life for mine, how much you would ultimately save me, not just physically, but in ways I never realized I needed." Owen stepped closer, gently taking her hand, their eyes meeting warmly. "Maybe that day wasn't an accident, Elena. Maybe it was meant to be. Maybe it was destiny." She smiled softly, gently squeezing his hand, warmth radiating clearly in her gaze. "I think you're right. Sometimes the universe brings people together exactly when they need each other most." He drew her closer, his voice softening tenderly, quiet sincerity filling every word. "Meeting you changed everything, not just my circumstances, but how I see myself, how I see the world. You gave me more than opportunity, Elena. You gave me hope." Her eyes shimmered gently, voice barely more than a whisper, deeply heartfelt. "And you showed me how to trust again, how to believe that success isn't about titles or money, but about kindness, courage, and integrity." For a quiet moment they stood silently, simply absorbing the gentle warmth and intimacy that had grown carefully between them, each understanding deeply that their journey had always been about more than chance. It had been about becoming who they were always meant to be. "I don't know exactly what the future holds," Owen admitted softly, his voice gentle yet filled with quiet strength. "But I do know I want to face it with you." Elena rested her head softly against his shoulder, comforted by his steady presence. "Whatever happens, Owen, I promise we'll face it together. Our story is only just beginning." Together, beneath the soft, peaceful glow of the moonlight, they stood quietly, hearts beating gently in harmony, knowing deeply they'd finally found their place, not just within their company, but within each other's lives. As they quietly embraced the gentle promise of a shared future, both Elena and Owen realized their meeting hadn't merely been luck or circumstance. It had been fate guiding them toward the happiness they both deserved. And as the quiet night deepened around them, filled with gentle hope and whispered promises, both Elena and Owen finally understood clearly. This wasn't merely the end of their journey. It was the beautiful, quiet beginning of the rest of their lives.